Have you ever wondered whether the stories within Islam, the creation, the flood, the prophets, and the final judgment, were truly unique revelations? Or were they part of a much older tapestry of myths and beliefs that stretched across Arabia long before the Qur'an? When we open the pages of history, we find a region alive with trade, poetry, and competing gods, a crossroads where the myths of Mesopotamia, Persia, and the Mediterranean all converged. The Qur'an would later call this the time of ignorance, Jahiliyyah, but to historians, it was an age of cultural fusion. To understand how Islam redefined faith in the 7th century, we must first travel back to the world that came before it, pagan Arabia before Islam. Long before Islam, the Arabian Peninsula was far from a spiritual wasteland. Across the deserts and oases, each tribe carried its own gods, spirits, and sacred places. The harsh landscape bred reverence for whatever seemed to hold power over life and death: the burning sun, the cooling moon, the rare gift of rain, the wind that could both give and take away. Every valley and well had its guardian spirit, every tribe, its patron deity. At the heart of Western Arabia stood Mecca, a modest settlement that owed its importance not to fertile land, but to its sanctuary, the Kaaba. The cube-shaped shrine was believed to have been ancient even then, a neutral ground where warring tribes could lay down arms. Within and around it stood idols of many gods, 360, one for every day of the solar year. Among them were Hubal, the god of divination, whose statue towered inside the Kaaba, and the 3 daughters of the high god Allah, Allat, Allat, and Manat. They embodied power, beauty, and destiny. Before any journey or battle, Arabs sought their favor with offerings and vows. When caravans returned safely, sacrifices of animals were made in gratitude. Pilgrims walked barefoot around the sanctuary, kissed sacred stones, and drew water from the nearby Zamzam well, thought to be touched by the divine. But religion in Arabia was never static. Camel caravans linked Mecca to Yemen, Syria, and Persia. Along with spices, incense, and silk came ideas, tales of Jewish patriarchs, Christian monks, Zoroastrian fire temples. Traders recited poetry about fate and the gods. Storytellers spoke of jinn, angels, and creation. Gradually, these beliefs intertwined, shaping a cosmology that mixed tribal gods with echoes of far older myths. By the 6th century, Mecca had become both marketplace and pilgrimage site, a spiritual crossroads where the old and the new met. In this world of shrines, idols, and inherited legends, people were already asking a dangerous question: is there not one power behind them all? It was here, amid this swirl of old gods and old questions, that a new revelation would soon emerge: the Jewish and Christian roots. When Muhammad began preaching in the early 7th century, Arabia was not a blank slate awaiting revelation. All around its borders lived people of the book, Christian Arabs in the north, Jewish tribes in the south and west, and scattered monks and hermits who carried fragments of ancient scripture in Syriac, Hebrew, and Greek. Trade and migration had long made Arabia part of a religious continuum that stretched from Jerusalem to Yemen. Caravans heading north toward Byzantium returned not only with silk and olive oil, but with stories, tales of Adam and Eve, Noah's Ark, Abraham's covenant, Moses leading his people through the desert. These narratives circulated in markets and oases, retold by poets and merchants in a dozen dialects. By the time the Qur'an began to take shape, such stories were already woven into the cultural imagination. The Qur'an's retellings of these figures would have sounded both familiar and startling. Familiar, because the names and settings echoed known traditions. Startling, because the message was sharpened into an uncompromising call to monotheism. Adam becomes the first prophet of a single God. Abraham is no longer a tribal patriarch, but the father of all who submit to the divine will. Moses' struggle with Pharaoh becomes a timeless warning against arrogance and oppression. Even the story of Mary and Jesus carries the resonance of earlier Christian writings such as the Proto-Evangelium of James, which tells of Mary's miraculous childhood and divine selection, and the infancy gospel of Thomas, in which the young Jesus shapes birds from clay and gives them life, a scene reimagined in the Qur'an as a sign of his prophetic power. Rather than copying these accounts, the Qur'an enters a conversation already centuries old. It refines and redirects inherited traditions, removing layers of theology that portrayed Jesus as divine and placing him firmly within the line of human prophets. In doing so, Islam positioned itself as both continuation and correction, affirming the sacred history shared by Jews and Christians, while insisting that revelation had not ended. The result was not imitation but synthesis, a renewed moral vision of one God, one humanity, and one final reckoning. The Quran's pagan echoes, the world that gave birth to Islam, did not vanish overnight. Beneath the new creed's monotheistic surface, traces of the old spiritual landscape remained like fossils pressed into living stone. At the heart of Mecca stood the Kaaba, the cube that had long been Arabia's holiest sanctuary. For generations, it had sheltered idols from every major tribe: Hubal, Al-Lat, Al-Uzza, Manat, and many others, each representing a fragment of divine power. When Islam arose, the idols were removed, but the structure itself remained. The Kaaba was not destroyed, it was reclaimed. The message was clear: the house of many gods would now belong to the one God alone. The black stone, dark and worn smooth by countless hands, survived this transformation. Pilgrims continued to touch and kiss it, yet its symbolism changed. Once a token of tribal blessing, it became a sign of unity, a single focal point drawing believers from every direction. The old act of circumambulation, walking in circles around the shrine, endured as well. What had once honored multiple deities was reinterpreted as a physical expression of submission to a single will. The pilgrimage, or Hajj, likewise evolved, rather than disappeared. Ancient rituals, casting stones, running between two hills, sacrificing animals, were given new explanations rooted in the stories of Abraham and his family. Practices once seen as pagan now carried prophetic meaning. In this way, Islam turned familiar movements into a new theology. Even symbols that later came to represent Islam echo deeper layers of Arabian belief. The crescent moon, now found atop mosques and flags, mirrors older lunar traditions that governed calendars, navigation, and ritual time. The moon had long been a measure of divine order in the desert sky. The Quranic revelation would sanctify that rhythm, transforming it into a calendar of faith. Throughout the Quran, the passionate condemnation of polytheists reveals how strong those earlier traditions remained. Islam did not emerge from a void. It redirected the spiritual energy of Arabia. Where once many gods had divided the tribes, now a single God gathered them, turning inherited rituals toward a radically new center of devotion, borrowed prophets and reframed myths. The Quran revisits many of humanity's oldest stories, not to copy them, but to recast and reframe them. Its authorship emerged in a world already rich with mythic language. To speak of creation, the flood, or the fall of humanity, was to step into a conversation that had been unfolding for millennia. Take the flood of Noah. The Quran's image of divine punishment through water mirrors much older narratives, particularly the Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh. In that story, the wise Utnapishtim survives a world-destroying deluge sent by restless gods. He builds a vast boat, gathers his family and the animals of the earth, and releases birds to test whether the waters have receded. The parallels are unmistakable. Divine wrath, a chosen survivor, the vessel of salvation, the bird returning with news of land. Yet the Quran transforms this tale's purpose. The flood is no longer a quarrel among deities, nor a punishment born of divine fatigue. It becomes a moral revelation, a lesson about human arrogance and the cost of ignoring the messenger of the one true God. Myth becomes monotheistic history. The creation story also bears the echo of ancient voices. Jewish midrashim, rabbinic commentaries on Genesis, describe God shaping Adam from different kinds of clay gathered from across the earth, explaining humanity's diverse colors and temperaments. The Quran uses similar imagery: humanity made from dust, clay, and water. But again, the focus shifts from the material of creation to its meaning, the act of divine will that breathes life and responsibility into humankind. Even the figure of Iblis, the rebellious spirit who refuses to bow before Adam, carries older resonances. In Zoroastrianism, the destructive spirit Ahriman stands in defiance of light. In Jewish lore, angels fall for pride or lust. The Quran unites these themes into a single drama of moral choice. Iblis is not a rival god, but a symbol of willful disobedience within creation itself. Seen together, these parallels do not weaken the Quran's originality. They reveal how it absorbed, purified, and redirected the mythic inheritance of the ancient world, transforming a chorus of old gods and legends into a new, uncompromising vision of one creator and one moral order. Building the mosque on ancient ground. As Islam moved beyond Arabia, it entered a world already layered with ancient civilizations: Persian, Byzantine, Egyptian, Berber, and beyond. Each land carried its own sacred memories, symbols, and architecture. Yet rather than destroy everything in its path, Islam often chose a more subtle form of transformation: absorption through reinterpretation. When the armies of the early caliphs swept across Persia, they met a people whose festivals and philosophies had shaped empires for centuries. Among them was Nowruz, the celebration of spring and renewal, dating back to the Zoroastrian age. Under Islamic rule, Nowruz survived, no longer a religious rite, but a cultural holiday marking the changing of the seasons. It was the same sun rising, but now beneath a new theology. Across the Middle East and North Africa, local holy men, poets, and mystics became new vessels for older impulses of devotion. Shrines that once honored pagan deities were rededicated to saints and scholars. The faithful still gathered at tombs, lit lamps, and asked for blessings, echoes of an older world that now found a home within Islamic spirituality. This blending gave rise to Sufism, the mystical heart of Islam, which merged the philosophical depth of Persia, the asceticism of Christianity, and the lyricism of Arabian poetry into one of the world's most profound spiritual movements. Even Islamic art and architecture bore the fingerprints of those it encountered. The soaring domes and mosaics of Byzantium were refined into the language of the mosque. Persian mastery of geometry and symmetry became the foundation of Islamic design, while Mesopotamian traditions of calligraphy transformed words into sacred art. The Qur'an's verses became not only recited truths but patterns of divine beauty etched into stone. From Cordoba to Cairo, from Samarkand to Delhi, the mosque rose, not upon empty ground, but upon the ruins and inspirations of the civilizations before it. Each region added its own color and rhythm, a Persian garden here, a Byzantine dome there, yet the melody remained constant. There is no God but God. It was faith built, not by erasing the past, but by harmonizing it. A faith built on ancient echoes. Every great religion is both an inheritance and an innovation. Just as Christianity reframed Judaism, and Judaism reworked Mesopotamian myth, Islam emerged from a world already rich with stories, refining them into a new, powerful narrative about unity, justice, and surrender. To see the echoes beneath its surface is not to deny its genius. It is to understand how ideas evolve, how each generation inherits the questions of the past and answers them in its own voice. Perhaps that is the deeper miracle, not that one book appeared out of nothing, but that humanity continues to tell, retell, and reshape its search for meaning. What do you think? Does this history of shared myths and transformations make Islam more human, or more divine in its ability to unify so much that came before it? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey through the ancient roots of faith, don't forget to like, subscribe, and explore more untold histories next time.